Hey everybody, welcome to week 3 of our Reacting to the Past role-playing exercise. This video goes over the written assignment for this week, which is a newspaper column, a song, a political cartoon, or a broadside. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what those things are. For context, this week our characters have an imaginary meeting at Delmonico's restaurant in New York to discuss the pro-slavery ideas of John C. Calhoun. It's intense. We had a week with Frederick Douglass, now we have a week with John C. Calhoun. Each character will write or design and then post a newspaper column, a song, maybe a letter to the newspaper editor, political cartoon, or a broadside to Slack for others to read and comment on. The document you produce should respond in some way to Calhoun to support him or denounce him. Our learning objectives for this assignment are to examine pro-slavery versus abolitionist ideology and understand the power of slavery in American political, religious, and economic life. The assignments include a newspaper column, a song, a political cartoon, or a broadside. You only have to do one, and you should have fun with it. If there are things you already enjoy trying, try them here. If you like the idea of doing some art, or you miss taking art, political cartoon. If you like writing songs, try a song, broadside, everything. So here are the steps to take to do the assignment. So you're going to want to take some time to read the selections by Calhoun in section 5 of the textbook. Make some notes about what seemed especially interesting or provocative. Then you're going to think about your character. How would your character respond to Calhoun's ideas? If you're playing Calhoun, you don't have to be too different, but just think about why the other characters should believe your ideas. Why I'm Right by John C. Calhoun. Maybe do a nice poster, write a little song about yourself. Song of Myself by John C. Calhoun. My boyfriend's laughing in the background. The normal Song of Myself was by Walt Whitman, who is also in the game. All right. Then you'll want to think about how you want to communicate your character's perspective. Would they write a rational sounding newspaper column? Would they write a letter to the editor of a newspaper saying, don't publish abolitionist or don't publish pro-slavery? Or maybe a satirical song, or maybe a sentimental song about freedom. You don't have to sing. You can always just write the words to the song and suggest a tune that someone could sing it to. That was very common at the time. Maybe your character would like to draw a political cartoon or publish a broadside, which is kind of an informative poster. There's a sample one about Henry Clay in the appendix of our book. So take a look at that and see if that interests you. So you'll select your choice of assignment and look at examples to inspire you. Definitely use Google Images as a great resource. I can also help. Just email me, ask me a question. Hey, Dr. Miller, I need an example of blank. I'll help you out. Plus, the American Antiquarian Society has some great resources online. Then you'll do your assignment, write it, draw it, design it, and you'll give it another look. Does this match your character's beliefs? Does it respond to Calhoun's ideas? And then you'll revise it if you need to. So then you'll post to Slack and you'll read everyone's awesome handiwork. Then you will comment on 2 posts. One should be Calhoun's post, and the other can be any post that doesn't have a comment on it yet. Then you will post it right here. You will drop it in the Horse Den Dropbox. That makes it easier for grading purposes. That way no one will get missed. With Slack, it's a lot of fun, but Slack also has a lot of content. Course Den Dropbox, everything is organized by you and your name. Some notes on complexity. One thing you're probably learning by now is that there was a lot more complexity to the arguments people were having during the era of abolition than we would think. I mean, I think all of us would probably say we are abolitionists, and we would have been absolutely gung-ho, and that's awesome. um but when you look back, there are some interesting challenges to this. We tend to think that abolitionists accomplished their goals in real life because slavery was abolished in the United States. However, that emancipation was achieved through a very bloody and fractious civil war, not through the moral conversion of the slaveholders. The abolitionists wanted that kind of conversion. They wanted people to want to end slavery, not just to be forced to end slavery. Many abolitionists were pacifists, and they didn't want violent means. So, the eventual destruction of slavery is not a simple victory. American slavery was built on a complicated set of ideas, beliefs, and practices. It is very obviously wrong. I'm not saying it's not. But the entire economy took it for granted in the same way that, when people talk about making large scale reforms in this country, even now, big change is really hard for people. It's not the same thing, but when people talk about universal health care and providing free health care to people, people will say things like, well, what about the people whose job it is to work in hospital billing? What about the people whose job it is to, work for health insurance companies and make money by charging for policies? There are people who focus on that because of the whole system that surrounded it. Back then, there were people who focused on the system, the economic system that surrounded slavery, and had a hard time thinking their way out of it. It was the result of racial prejudice and racism. It is very clearly true. And a lot of that prejudice was connected to how people tried to rationalize slavery. I suppose it was relatively, I don't know, I guess it made sense for people to try to rationalize slavery by saying it was deserved, and therefore we get more and more racist treatment. Because if, otherwise, then you're admitting to being the bad guy, and people don't admit to being the bad guy often. Many Americans very bigoted, and you're learning that of some of your characters. And it was part of a whole system of degradation and enslavement and self-justification. That's one reason why the pro-slavery movement referred to themselves, the status quo. They wanted things as they were. They didn't want to add additional negative choices, but the economy was connected to the enslavement of Black people. And most white people had never known anything else. And abolition was happening elsewhere in the world. And, thankfully we eventually were able to fight for that emancipation. So I guess the summary of that is that you can be yourself and be a good and smart person and think about all the complex reasons that people argued about slavery. That does not change the fact that it's terribly, terribly wrong. Also, I know you're nice. I like you all. However, when you're writing things, sometimes people get carried away and they want to use the sort of stock language or symbols that people use when they talk about race and slavery. Obviously, we mentioned before that particular slurs are off limits. And I wanted to make another little point about that, because people do care about academic freedom, and I care about academic freedom as well. But I don't think that this violates it, because there are so many symbols of hatred and violence, and we are trying to examine the ideas that were behind those symbols. And we can only do that productively without incendiary symbols being deployed. We don't allow a real duel with a real gun, in these simulations. We don't want to use words that harm education and disrupt the educational process that we are going through here. That doesn't mean they weren't real. That doesn't mean people didn't experience that. I think that as writers, you can find creative ways to make your points. And I'm honestly looking forward to seeing that. Showing that you are pro status quo is a challenging thing to do, and I'm interested in seeing how people do it. Here is our rubric. I'll go over quickly, and then I'll show you some broadsides. Are you being clear in explaining the content? Is your character's position clear and plausible? It's not about whether you're like the best singer in the world or whether you're good at drawing. It's okay. Just do your best. This isn't an art class. Let's see, I edited some previous rubrics that have been used in the past. And then finally, are you writing correctly? You can make an error or two and still do well in the class. But if the errors distract from my ability to read, you might lose a couple more points from that. So that is what we have in the realm of the assignment. What I would like to take a look at now, though, is what broadsides were. So I'll just do a little dragging over right here. And so these are pretty common. In this case, we have anti-slavery meetings broadside. We have, let's see what else we find. That's there. Let's see. Men of color, to arms, now or never. 3 years service, fail now and our race is doomed. Very, very important broadside messages. If you're walking down the street in a city and you see the man is not bought. Outrage, fellow citizens, an abolitionist exciting the feelings of the North against the South. So this is a pro-South broadside. No slavery, 4th of July, Massachusetts, Anti-Slavery Society. 50 cents, eminent speakers. So it's very exciting. Wonder who the eminent speakers are. Well, we'll have to show up to find out, I guess. And finally, here's this one, clearly meant to encourage people in Kentucky to fight against the Yankees. Kentuckians, the time for hesitation has passed. You have now to fight either for the Yankees, who will press you into their service, or for your homes, your firesides, your property, and your liberty. So people are using this loaded language in these broadsides. And that's what you can do as well. All right. Let me know if you have questions.